Everybody knows that Steve is broken. I mean, there's no way you should be able to have this move whenever you... This is Steve's down air. You can spawn it at any time as long as you're in the air and have at least one iron. Steve has a unique mechanic allowing him to mine on the ground and get materials. And he gets about 1 iron every 3 to 6 mines, meaning you should almost always have anvil ready. But hey, let's just ignore the 31 iron it costs to make in Minecraft. When you're out of materials and try to spawn an anvil or spawn a second one, you get a small little poof. Now this might seem pointless, but it actually cancels all of Steve's momentum. And unlike most aerials, anvil is considered a projectile and solid ground. So, if you stay on the anvil for long enough, you actually gain your double jump back. You're also able to bounce off the anvil if you somehow get spiked into it. This lets you mine on it, and for some reason, it even works in the air. If you manage to grab someone while you're falling on the anvil, this happens. Now usually, strong projectiles have some sort of downside to them, whether that be charging it up or just being very slow but powerful. But anvil, it just decides that it doesn't care about the rules. However, it is similar to some projectiles in Smash. Both of these moves come out relatively quickly and have a very similar trajectory. Steve's anvil doesn't gain a hitbox until frame 20. What this means is that if you reflect anvil before frame 20, Steve actually doesn't get hit.
What?
But let's take a look at the damage. Here's Steve's anvil. I mean, pretty much the same, right? Well, there's actually one major difference I forgot to mention. Steve can actually stay on top of the anvil, and when he does, it increases the damage drastically. 21.6%. Now this might not seem like a huge difference, but it makes this move kill extremely early.
Which one might be? Oh, what? I guess that.
Remember how I said Steve needs to stand on the anvil for the damage to increase? Well, I lied. Now, Steve is actually stuck on the anvil for the first 25 frames of the move. 28 if you count the 3-frame jump squat. But if you land anvil on the first frame that it's active, it will use a strong hitbox whether or not Steve's actually standing on it, while also letting him jump off. Another way to do this is to immediately minecart after using anvil. For some reason the game thinks that Steve is still on top of the anvil and makes it do the strong attack instead. And if your opponent is unlucky enough to be standing on the anvil, this happens. One of my personal favorite things to do is the imposter combo.
Do you know how to react to what I'm doing, and do you know how to deal with them? I don't even know what happened right there. So
by using the strong hit of anvil and jumping off, you can place a block right as the anvil sends your opponent into it. There's almost no way your opponent is ready to tech. As I've mentioned before, Steve's anvil comes out below him, which is different to almost any other projectile in the game. So, it gets the most use when he's in disadvantage. Almost every other character in the game when they're in this situation only has a couple of options to get down to stage. But Steve, he literally just has a get out of jail free card. It lets him get back to stage in almost any situation. Having this tool is absolutely game changing. Anvil allows for some pretty crazy edge guards. But just being able to drop this big chunk of metal from anywhere is something that any character could use extremely well. And they decided to put it on Steve of all characters. But the crazy kill power combined with the low risk for Steve, since he can just disengage whenever he chooses to, forces opponents to respect Anvil so much that it's usually better just to avoid it than try to challenge it.
Sure that he has his claim, trying to stake it.
Oh right. You might not be familiar with how clashing works in Smash, so here's a quick rundown. If your move deals within 9% of the opposing move's damage, both moves will clash. So, to clash with Steve's anvil, you need a move that does at least 13% damage, which is honestly a pretty big ask.
Oh, is that dead? Oh my gosh! Is Spencer taking the game?
Also, if you manage to hit Snake's up B, he literally just dies. But to be honest, Steve can sometimes not get punished for it. So you just have to be really confident when you try to challenge it. But beating Anvil becomes much easier if you have some kind of reflector. You can easily take a stock at 30% or even less if you predict the Anvil correctly. Because of how often Anvil is used, you can actually bait out reflectors pretty easily if you know how. I used Anvil a lot during this set, so I knew that my opponent thought I was going to use it. I decided to delay my landing with blocks until I saw an opening, and then I just hit a back air and I won the game. Well, recently, there's been a discovery that makes punishing Anvil easier than ever before. You see, Steve's Anvil actually has two hitboxes. One when he's falling through the air, and a second, considerably weaker landing hitbox. Well, unless you're Bowser Jr. For some reason, he takes double damage. I have no idea why this happens. What a lot of players tend to do is immediately let go of shield right after getting hit by Anvil, which causes them to get hit by the weaker landing hitbox, making it almost impossible to punish. However, if you jump out of shield at the right time, you can actually avoid the weaker hitbox, and it leaves a window open to punish Steve, leading to some absolutely insane punishes. Everyone's shield in Smash Ultimate has 50% health, and Steve's Anvil does about 22%, or just a little less than half. It's already pretty good, but with the second weaker hit, it almost breaks shields on its own, and creates a ton of pressure for anyone who doesn't know how to deal with it. Now, what if I told you there's a way to double the damage that Steve's Anvil does to shields, just by using one single block? Steve's blocks have some pretty weird properties. Because of this weird jank hitbox, if you hit the anvil on the edge of the block, it actually does 0 damage to the block. But when anvil lands on the center of the block, it breaks the block almost instantly, which is just long enough for the landing hitbox to activate, which breaks the block and resets the strong hitbox, letting you do this. Note that this isn't actually a true shield break. If you mash jump or any other option, you should be able to escape the shield break, but you're still going to get hit by a guaranteed anvil. Plus, it's so fast that it's almost impossible to react to unless you're ready for it. Notice how when Steve does a short hop down air, he actually gets pushed onto the top of it. And you can actually do this to opponents as well. If your opponent runs into the anvil while you're shielding, you can short hop anvil and push them on top. This shield pokes and can even kill. This is a tech known as entity cramming, and it was discovered by a player named Rockman. Surprisingly, this also actually works with minecart and lets you pull off some ridiculous stuff like this. And if that wasn't enough, Steve gets a frame 4 out of shield option by using footstool anvil whenever someone misspaces against him, letting him punish fast moves that would otherwise be impossible to punish. Luckily, Steve has one of the worst airspeeds in the game, coming in at 0.86. I mean, could you imagine if he actually... What? Okay, Anvil's collision is pretty weird. It's almost like a solid block because you can't run through it, but you can actually walk inside of it. And while you roll inside, you travel much further than you normally would. But this specific tech is called the Roblox Rush. Yes, that's the real name. Let me explain. To To activate the Roblox Rush, you need to be inside the anvil's collision box while hitting something. Then, immediately double jump and hold forward. You can hit almost anything, but the most common and useful are blocks and crafting table. When you get the boost, you move forward by default. And if you flick your stick backwards instantly, you can actually move your momentum backwards. Getting momentum from anvil also works off ledge. All you have to do is just hold B. It uses a tech called PBR, which I'll get into more in a different video. If you have a block positioned 3 blocks above you, the anvil actually spawns inside of you instead, because there's no room for you to stand. This tech is called anvil canceling, and it lets you get momentum on basically anything you want. Even Elytra can be boosted by it, boosting the distance by quite a bit. Anvil canceling also makes it easier to slip past ledge. Something interesting is that when building this block shape, Steve is technically allowed to wave dash, but when combining it with anvil canceling, you get turbo anvil cancel options, otherwise known as Taco. Taco was discovered by Waidu, and what it does is it basically allows you to anvil cancel out of a wave dash into almost anything that anvil canceling can do. In order for Taco to work, you need a block that's at least wood or stronger, as if it's dirt, it'll just instantly break, and you won't be able to anvil cancel. One of the major differences is that you're actually allowed to use aerials, unlike anvil canceling. One part of Steve's kit I haven't mentioned yet is his TNT. TNT's pressure plate can be activated by buffering a short hop anvil as early as frame 10, which is about 1/10 of a second, which makes it almost completely unreactable. And if you do this while you're invincible, it can be an amazing mix-up. Let's take a look at this clip here. Right here, I've conditioned this player to think I would upgrade my tools every time I respawn, because I knew that the next stock he would try to punish it. So this time, after noticing that we're both on our last stock, I decided to use the instant anvil TNT setup, and I won the game because of it. When you step on a pressure plate, it'll freeze you in whatever action you are currently doing, and anvil can activate the freeze. So if you time it right, you can get a 17 frame parry window. For context, the normal parry window is 5 frames. Here's something funny I found. If you build this L shape, do TNT, anvil cancel, and then minecart, and hold right on your stick, you get sent flying. By the way, this only works when you're facing left for some reason, and make sure you're at a high enough %. This tech doesn't even have a name, so if you have any ideas, let me know. TNT cannons are also in Smash. Honestly though, I've never seen anyone hit this in tournament or against a real opponent, so it's pretty impossible to land. Another interesting thing is that if you place TNT on anvil while it's falling, it actually gets hit. You can do some pretty weird stuff with this. Now, if you manage to combine TNT with the Roblox Rush, it's kind of insane. But the best use with anvil by far is ledge trapping. Ledge trapping is when you trap your opponents on the ledge or when they're recovering and cover their options to keep them off stage. When an opponent is on the ledge, they usually have 5 options: roll, jump, get up attack, neutral get up, or the occasional drop down. The reason anvil is so overpowered when ledge trapping is that it can cover multiple options just by being placed. By lining yourself up with the ledge, you can actually set the anvil on the edge of the block consistently. And what this does is it actually covers multiple options, including jump, get up attack, or neutral get up. The reason this happens is because the game doesn't want your opponent stuck in a block, so instead it just breaks the blocks, which causes anvil to fall on them. All that's left to cover is their roll with practically any move. It's actually insane how much this can control. Here are some examples of some ledge traps I do. There's probably a couple ledge traps I don't know or I missed, but by far the best ledge trap Steve has is the Gimmer ledge trap. First, place a TNT at about roll distance. Hold jab to move the TNT back, and walk backwards to stick to the ledge. Then jump, place a block, and follow up with an anvil to make sure it won't break the block. This setup literally covers every single option. Steve also has a way to block tether recoveries. Even if they manage to grab the ledge, it'll instantly break the block and make them get hit anyways. Now, what would happen if we managed to get 2 anvils? Oh, okay. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still here and not subscribed, tell me why, and I'll try to make my next video even better. Also, huge shout out to Mick Bro and Titanium for all the help they provided, and anyone else who contributed.